So this is one of several sessions that SCORE Youngstown is putting on as part of a women in entrepreneurship sort of academy. So we'll have a variety of weekly calls. This is number one. And this week's call is about women in the health and beauty industry. So I want to go ahead and give our panelists a chance to introduce themselves and tell us about their businesses. So in whatever order you would like to speak, why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Go ahead, Mom.
I'll go first. My screen says Beverly Costello because I'm using her computer, but I am Leslie Icuss, and I have legal hair and day spa in Steubenville, Ohio.
Perfect. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, and then did you want her to tell a little bit about her business first, or do you want?
You can go ahead and introduce yourself. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm Angela Lombardo. Actually Leslie's daughter, but I own Fresh Twist, which is a plant-based restaurant also in Steubenville. It's actually in the legal hair building.
Okay, that's awesome. So are you guys like, you kind of collaborate with this kind of stuff if you're in the same building?
So just a real quick answer on that, because I explain this a lot, but we actually have our whole family under one roof.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom, Leslie, my dad, Chip, and my sister, Shayna, they're all working on the legal hair side. And then my brother, Trey, and we started Fresh Twist 2 years ago. And it's connected. Yeah, so it is a collaboration.
That's really cool. You've got your entire family. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You guys must work well together, because I know that some families, this would not be a thing. So you guys must work really well and get along.
I think we work so much that we're hardly around each other. So it works out great.
Yeah. We don't see each other as much as you would think.
No, that makes sense. So, okay. So, let's just start out with talking about how you guys sort of got motivated to start your own businesses, what that journey looked like, and how you got to where you are. So I know it sounds like a big question, but it's not. It's just like an abridged version. So, Angela, we can start with you. Have you always seen yourself as someone who's wanted to be a female entrepreneur, or how did you get your dream going here of starting your own business in this industry?
Okay, well, I wouldn't say that I always saw myself as being an entrepreneur. I obviously grew up in an entrepreneurial environment since my parents own legal hair from the time I was born. I don't think I was ever really sure what I wanted to do. I joke around that I still don't know what I want to do, because I don't think this is the end all be all, but
Mm-hmm.
So I did end up going to school for business, because my mom just gave the advice of like, if you study business, then you can kind of do whatever you want with that. And I have found that to be true. So I started out in real estate, and then, but I worked for a home builder. So it was sort of like running your own business, because I managed communities. And then from there, I transitioned into working with my parents at Legal Hair. And just during that time, it just became evident that my passion is health and wellness. So just super into like healthy eating, like using lifestyle as prevention for disease or even reversal. And I would just always be kind of into that. So, I mean, really, my mom pushed me and she knows it. So as far as like becoming an entrepreneur, I don't think I necessarily had that in myself to like take the risk. So I would have to give her a ton of credit. So while I was working there, and she would just constantly encourage me to just like do what I'm doing now. And I didn't have any restaurant experience or, anything like that. And I also like, I think there's a ton of value in like real world experience. Like you do learn a lot in school, but working for my parents taught me like the theory of it is one thing, and then seeing it and it happening is like a whole different thing. So like understanding how a business operates, I at least could do that. And so then it was just like trying to figure out how to do it in a restaurant setting. And my brother was doing some like gas and oil type job at the time. So he was sort of flexible. And once we got him on board too, then I felt like more confident having like a partner. yeah. And then Leslie basically put a sign up in front of Legal Hair, fresh twist. And so then I committed. So yeah, I mean, there was, yeah. So that's sort of like the story without going into like maybe future questions that you're going to ask. I just had a ton of encouragement from my parents, but now I guess I love it because there's a lot of benefits to, being in this position, running your own business.
And what kind of food and what do you serve at your restaurant?
Yeah, so we're what's considered fast casual dining. So if you think of like Subway or Chipotle, probably more like Chipotle because there's some cooking involved. That type of concept. I mean, people can sit down and eat, but it's quick. There's not waiters and waitresses. And we do an all plant-based menu. So we offer anything from, pizza type flatbreads to smoothies, salads, green bowls, wraps. We have some other like local vendors that we work with, even in Pittsburgh. So we offer juice and like different kinds of protein bars. COVID kind of like shifted our like focus away from, we were doing some like in-house workshops and things like that, more education, but I think we'll get back into that now. And that was like a huge risk that we took. So what that means is like our menu is completely free from any animal products. So we don't serve any eggs, dairy, or meat. And not that there's anything wrong with eating those things, but this is just an opportunity for people to learn how to eat more fruits and vegetables and do like meatless meals. So that's kind of what we do.
Awesome. That sounds like a place that I would really like.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been trying to eat more plant-based lately, so that sounds really cool.
Thank
Awesome.
you. Thanks.
So Leslie, I got your name right?
Yes.
So I'm curious to hear this from you too. How did you get started in your industry as an entrepreneur? Has this always been a dream of yours to start your own business? And how did you end up in the health and beauty industry? Let's hear about that.
So yeah, actually, never a dream of mine, not even in the least bit. So it's interesting because I went to the vocational school. I wanted to be a journalist, and I went to the vocational school thinking I would be able to work my way through college. I went into cosmetology and I thought, okay, I came from a family where college wasn't going to be an option, but I was always very, I had very good grades. And I thought, okay, I'll be able to get a beauty school license, work my way through college. And then I met my husband at my first job and sort of love at first sight. And he's, one of the most amazing hairdressers ever. And when I married him, I had an Italian mother-in-law, who was always very much, her family always had grocery stores and they had always been in business. So it was, you need your own business, you need your own business, you need your own business. So at that point, it became the dream of, we were both working in salons and for other people, sometimes together, sometimes not. So at that point, it became the dream of having our own salon. So that's how we did that. So we opened our first salon in a very, very small building that's no longer there. It was where Harding School is, which has now been torn down. And then as we outgrew that building, we moved into our next building. And then as we outgrew that building, we went into our next building and, then the opportunity arose when Western Sizzlin went out of business. And I think at that point in my career and just reading about the trends in the industry, it was like there weren't going to be too many mom and pop businesses left. So you either had to get big or, to have all of the things, health insurance and all of those things for our employees, it became important, the strength in numbers to grow the business bigger and in order to be able to make the business better.
Okay, yeah. So you said it's called Legal Hair.
Legal Hair and Day Spa.
Does it have or either of you, is there anyone that's a lawyer? I'm curious how you got the name.
No, not at all.
But we get that phone call a lot.
Yes. No, you know what? We went to Boston to buy our equipment for the first salon, and we ate at a restaurant called Legal Seafoods, and we were trying to think of names at the time. And my mother-in-law wanted us to call it Icuss Hair Designs. And I thought that would be a little challenging to answer the phone.
Uh-huh.
So we
It's a
like
mouthful,
legal
yeah.
hair. And it should be against the law to look this good, like they had these sayings. And
Yeah.
it was just easy to answer the phone, easy to remember. So we stayed with it.
That's awesome. So it's your story. I like this. My grandparents were from Italy, and they came here and opened a hair salon. So they
Wow. Yeah.
yes, they did that for I think a good 30 years. And they did really well with it. But so I like listening to your story. So one of the questions that I have, just to build on what you said, so you started out wanting to be a journalist, and then you realized, hey, I want to do this other thing instead. And I'm curious how you settled on that decision and how you were okay with saying, I'm not going to do this anymore and I want to do this instead. Because something that I see a lot of female entrepreneurs have trouble with is changing directions. They're afraid to leave the job. They feel like, I know I committed to this, I have to finish this, and I really want to do this other thing, but people are going to say this, and I'm not sure how these people are going to feel. So I'm kind of curious how you were able to put one to rest and then really move on to what you really wanted to do.
So you know what? I feel like I grew up in a different time, now, like when my kids went to school, I encourage them all, if you don't know what you want to do, get a business degree. When I came out of school, you moved out of the house and you were on your own. Nobody really told you, like it was
Mm-hmm.
sort of survival. Okay. If you want to eat, you better get a job. And because I just came out of beauty school, I could get a job, I could support myself, there was hope that I had a path. And I also want to say my beauty school instructors, both of them, saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And I mean that I didn't see that ever being me. And they both saw it way before I saw it. Okay. 45 years later, and I can tell you this, my beauty school teacher just retired and has worked for me the last 15 years. She just retired. She will be 90 on August 1st. So her
Wow.
passion for the industry, I don't have to explain to you. And my other beauty school teacher, I'm still friends with. We still go to dinner. She owned a Merle Norman salon at the time. And they both so believed in me. They've always come to me to get their hair done. They've always sent me clients. In beauty school, they made me think I was something I didn't think I was capable at the time. But I guess having
Mm-hmm.
those mentors is just, it's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's priceless. And you can have people in your life or in your industry that can help kind of guide you and see your
Yep.
potential before you can.
Yep.
So, Angela, I'm going to shift gears here and we'll say, aside from COVID, because we're going to talk about the challenges that came with the pandemic, but other than that, what would you say has been your biggest challenge in getting your business off the ground and getting it going?
I mean, the first biggest challenge was convincing my brother to leave meat off the menu.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, at the time, especially, I was like super, for me, I was going into this really based off of a passion of wanting to help people go more plant-based. So I
Mm-hmm.
felt like if I compromised on that from the beginning, then I would be just going into opening a restaurant. And for me, it was like more than that. So basically just like just a quick background is like the reason that I got into all of this actually is, but also I have to credit my parents for, which is my daughter has a health condition that is technically incurable. And so it's treated with surgical intervention, but we have found over the years that a more plant-based diet, it potentially has helped her not need as many surgeries. And
Mhm.
so once I saw that and I started, I actually did a little bit of like health coaching before I went back to school. Like I did an online program and I was doing some health coaching, and I was just finding that people could like come off of blood pressure medication and they could, reverse their type 2 diabetes or things like that. So my motivation was really, really genuinely rooted in like trying to help people through food. So now keep in mind, this is like 5 years ago. And
Mhm.
because it takes a while to get a business up and, running, and I had a lot of hesitation. And so vegan and plant-based and vegetarian was not even as trendy. And especially not in Steubenville where we live, because we're just a little bit behind the trends anyway. So convincing anybody of that and that it could be successful was like, it was very intimidating. That was probably, I was just super intimidated, like that no one would show up, that no one would come.
Right.
And so then also just, my brother is like a typical guy, he eats healthy. Sometimes we're from an Italian family. We've established this. So, I mean, we love to eat. And so, yeah, so getting him on board with doing that was a little bit of a challenge, and just overcoming that fear. So that was definitely, I think, probably the biggest challenge, just overcoming that fear, and just going all in on a, a feeling or like a passion that I had. But now I'm so glad I did that.
Great. So how did you get your brother to, like, how did you get him really on board with this? Because I've had some women who are starting businesses and stuff just be intimidated or apprehensive about really saying what they feel they need to say, or putting their idea out there with a potential business partner or something like that. So I'd be curious to hear sort of how you finally settled on, okay, we're going to be partners, we're going to do this, we're on the same page now. How did you get from point A to point B?
I think there's like a couple like levels to that. I mean, first and foremost, he is my brother, so we can be very honest with each other. I mean, we have that type of relationship. And I was probably doing more of the planning at that point because he was working in gas and oil and I was working with my family in that building. And I basically, I felt like a compromise was this: let's just start out like this, doing 100% plant-based, and we can always add chicken on the menu if no one comes. If no one wants to eat here and it's not going to be a failure, at least we can say we tried it. And then if it doesn't work out, here's our plan B. So let's just try it. And he's like, I mean, he's cool about stuff like that. I mean, he's not, once I think that approach worked well for both of us because we could at least try it, and then we had a plan B. And so maybe that's my advice, would just be, if you're trying to suggest something that you're afraid you're going to get pushback on, and then maybe, hey, how about we try it this way? And if it doesn't work out, here's a plan B. So that worked for me.
Yeah. So kind of maybe taking like the long-term commitment off the table for a moment.
Yeah. So it's not like so it's not like my way or the highway, that's no way to start out a partnership anyway.
Did you ever have people come in and ask for like meat dishes? I'm curious.
Here's what here's what we actually have people do is, there's two very common things that happen. One is, we live in a small community. So I will have a friend tell me, I overheard these guys at the gym say that they got the taco bowl and that your taco meat is so good. And like, they had no idea that it was made from walnuts. So I have a lot of people who don't even realize. Yeah, they don't even realize it. The second thing is, I do have a lot of people. I have found that there are more people than I realize that are sensitive to dairy products. So a lot of people will come in and they will say, does that have dairy in it? Does that have dairy in it? Does that have dairy in it? Not even realizing we have no dairy on our menu. And they're like so relieved to find out that basically they have free range on the menu. They can eat anything that we offer because they don't have to worry about the dairy. A vast majority of our menu is also gluten-free. So with people being more aware of like food sensitivities and food allergies, I feel like sometimes they feel like they just hit the jackpot. They didn't even know when they walked in, but then they figure out, oh my gosh, I can eat everything here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so not too many people I feel like come in expecting to get meat, but I do feel like, I mean, it happens sometimes, but I do feel
Yeah.
like some people don't even realize what they just ate wasn't really.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned, and we talked for a second about at one point, this was kind of veganism and stuff was kind of like a trendy sort of diet. But I think you have a good point that like with Everlywell and these other food
Mhm.
sensitivity tests that people can
Yeah.
just do at home, more and more and more people are finding out that even if they don't have, celiac or something, they have a sensitivity to gluten or they have a sensitivity to something else. So,
Right. Mhm.
um, that's really, really cool. Okay, so Leslie, what has, other than what we've talked about so far, what do you feel has been your biggest challenge that you've had to overcome in starting your own business?
Hmm. And biggest challenge in starting the business, I guess when you start a business, the biggest thing is building the clientele. Like, I guess when we first
Hmm.
opened it, because there weren't nearly as many regulations and restrictions as there are now. I actually say I feel bad now for young people trying to start a business because it takes a lot more money now than when we started with all of the licenses and fees and permits. But
Hmm.
our biggest challenge in the beginning was, we started our business, I think, with like $7,000 total. And we didn't have money for advertising and those type of things. So it was learning a lot of networking, community involvement, those kind of things, just to build the client base to begin with, because we didn't have a huge client base to begin with.
So do you feel like it was mostly sort of like word of mouth and that kind of
Absolutely.
thing?
Absolutely. At that time, you didn't have the luxury of social media. So everything was
Hmm.
word of mouth and in person, and doing the kind of work that people would talk about your work, like that was all you had to go on, was your work and word of mouth.
So do you feel like that kind of marketing still has a place? I know you mentioned now, and it is true. We have all this social media and we have Yelp and we have, all these digital tools and stuff. But do you think word of mouth and sort of like this old fashioned type of marketing is still relevant?
I think absolutely, because I think no matter what, no matter how much money you spend or social media, if your product isn't there to begin with, like the food or the haircut or the
Hmm.
massage, whatever, okay? If people aren't talking about what they got done, and no matter how they share that information, you know, I still think the product has, the
Hmm.
service, what you provide has to be the first consideration.
Right.
I don't want to interrupt, but I just want to add on to that too, because
Hmm.
when I first came to work with my family, I was super like gung ho about let's get in the social media world. This is like free marketing, like, and it is so effective. But even I would say with that, like at in our type of is our both of our businesses are repeat business. So it might get someone's
Hmm.
foot in the door the first time. But if you're not putting out something that they want to come back for, you know what I'm saying? You can present yourself
Yeah.
any type of way online. But if they come, they might see something that looks delicious or is exactly how they want their hair done. But if they leave and that's not the experience that they saw online, then that's not effective, right? So they're not going to come back. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it can only get you so far where like a genuinely good experience and coming back, repeat business and talking about it will never, I feel like that will never lose value.
I agree with you. And just in places that I've gone, restaurants and hair salons and stuff like that, I don't go and rave about the social media posts. I mean, people go and rave about the great service that they had, or how friendly everyone was, or whatever it might be. So I would agree with you guys that there's definitely a place still for like customer satisfaction, and then customers go out and they talk about it and then you get more
Mhm.
customers. So um okay, so Angela, while you're talking, I don't know statistically the ratio of men to women in the restaurant industry, but I'm curious if you feel that you've faced any kind of challenges as a woman in your industry.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. No, mm-mm.
That's
I
good to
think I'd be
hear.
grasping at straws to try to come up with something. I don't know if it's just how I was raised, and so it's not even
Mm-hmm.
on my radar. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I feel, if anything, it's an advantage because I just feel like women are good communicators. And I mean, I'm just generalizing. I think
Mm-hmm.
men are too. But yeah, no, I would never, I don't think it's ever been a disadvantage for me.
That's good to hear because
Yeah.
sometimes, you hear some negative stories. So it's nice to hear you say that you think, women typically have the personality that's really good in that kind of industry. So, um, Leslie, what about you? Do you feel like you face any
I would like,
challenges?
I would also like to elaborate on that because when we first started our business, most of the loans that I had access to, you had an advantage applying as a woman, even though my husband and I, were partners. I still applied for loans as a woman, okay? Because whether it was at the time, our first loan was an Ohio mini loan program. And then when I went for the SBA, I think there were advantages to loan programs. I think there were women's networking groups. I've never been in a
Mm-hmm.
men's networking group, but at that time I was in women's business networking group. And that
Mm-hmm.
was so valuable, okay, to be able to learn from other women in business. I have many friends who are women in business and how we helped each other, because women, we talk way more.
It's true.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I know I've never thought it was a disadvantage at all. And definitely it was an advantage in a lot of ways.
That's great to hear. Because my experience mostly in business is in the nonprofit industry, and that's definitely more sort of male sided. So it's nice to hear you guys say this stuff. So, um, the beauty industry and the restaurant industry, I would say, were probably two of the most hardest hit industries during the pandemic. So, Leslie, since we have you talking, how did you sort of deal with and overcome, I guess, even the mental challenges and emotional challenges with the pandemic and the restrictions and keeping your business going? Can you tell us about that?
I'm going to say I'm very lucky because my other daughter, who isn't here tonight, she's also very good at business. I have two managers and my husband, and it took all of us together to sit down and say, how do we reinvent this business? Because basically, it was reinventing everything
Mm-hmm.
we ever did, because we went from having 24 chairs down to 12, because the chairs, we can only use half of them to have them distance.
Right.
So then I had employees, who worked in order to lose half of luckily we had a lot of space. So we put chairs wherever that we could put a chair. But, I still had 40 employees, 35 service providers who I couldn't give them full hours. Everybody couldn't work at the same time. So all the schedules had to be redone, the way the
Mm-hmm.
clients were brought into the building. I mean, everything. It was like a nightmare. And I will say that a million times. So, and even now, and then like, in December, when the COVID scare was big, okay,
Yeah.
we had like so many people canceling, and then people thought nothing of canceling because they could use COVID as an excuse. Okay. So like anytime you decide you didn't want to come. And then now we're on the other end of that and we're so busy and it's crazy. It's just like so many changes in the last year. It's like, I feel every day I'm actually bringing in a consultant from the hair industry on June 23rd because schedules have changed. The hours people want to work have changed. Nobody wants to work 40 hours. The
Uh-huh.
challenge to find employees right now, I'm sure you've heard that rumor.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
So I'm working with the beauty school closer than ever, trying to, you know, incorporate people into my business. I'm going to a job fair that, it's just so many changes. I even forget the question, but it's a lot of changes.
No, yeah. I mean, that describes a lot of the challenges that I think a lot of business owners are facing. I swear probably 90% of the storefronts that I drive past or that I walk past, they're trying to hire people. And I know that some of the local restaurants are not even, they're closed on Sundays now, and they weren't
Yep.
before because they just don't have enough people to
Nope.
work, which is crazy.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so Angela, since we're
Mhm.
talking about restaurants, what would you say the biggest challenge has been for you during the pandemic?
I mean, it was the same thing. It was adapting. We had not even been open for a year when everything shut down. Our like
Mhm.
our 1 year anniversary was in May, and
Oh gosh.
everything started shutting down in March.
Yeah.
So I feel like, I don't know, I guess in some way, we didn't have like this perfect system. All right. Like, I mean, we were figuring things out. We were still figuring
Uh-huh.
things out. And so, different than a lot of like sit down restaurants, like I had said before, we're fast casual dining. So we were sort of set up in a way that worked okay. We never closed. We shortened our hours for a little while, and then we extended them back out, but not all the way back out.
Mhm.
Just like as a side note, I mean, I do think that one of the possible, I don't know, like the silver lining that might come out of
Mhm.
this whole thing is that it, it, it can be hard if people don't want to work 40 hours a week or whatever, but maybe that people have reevaluated their life and balancing their life. I know that happened for me, because when you're starting on a
Mhm.
new business, like I lived there. We lived
Oh,
there.
I'm
I
sure.
mean,
Mhm.
in the beginning, my brother and I'd be there till 1 o'clock in the morning, and we'd come back at 6 a.m. And because we were trying to figure things out. Once we got systems in place, obviously that stopped happening. But I think one thing that any entrepreneur is probably guilty of at some point is like, there's opportunity. If you're in business, like you can, the more you're open, the more you're available, the more financial opportunity there is. And so how do you shut that off a little bit? So anyway, COVID kind of forced us to scale back a little bit. And but we were still able to keep going. I mean, we were still able to
Mhm.
stay open, and the concept worked well. I mean, we just kind of changed it where we would bring, we did the curbside. And then in the beginning we just had it, how most restaurants had it set up.
Right.
And as far as like our type of restaurant is like our employees aren't relying on tips or sit down diners. So we already pay them above
Mhm.
like kind of the industry standard. So so that helped a little bit. I mean, it was I think the whole situation was just stressful. And it was stressful working when no one else was working.
Right.
If I'm
Right.
being honest, like sometimes I just like emotionally, you're just like you didn't know, like, am I putting my family at risk? Like, what am I putting my employees at risk? Like,
Yeah.
is this worth it? And I would say it was more of the emotional stress overall was probably the hardest part. But I think, before COVID happened, since we were so new, we literally did not even have a phone. Okay. We had no phone. We did not have online ordering. We did not,
Mhm.
I mean, we were just busy. We were busy from the beginning. And so the one thing that was the good that came out of COVID is we have a phone now. We have online ordering. We use DoorDash. And so we
Mhm.
kind of adapted. And because we have all those other avenues of like ways for people to order, we have shorter hours now, but we're just about, doing the same totals in the shorter hours. So now we have a better like life balance. So
Right.
I don't know. I think
Yeah.
we just learned a lot, and learning is painful in the beginning, but then it's advantageous. So it was
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
good.
And that is, I mean, it's a running joke about, I might as well sleep at my place of business, but it can get out of control,
Yeah.
like you're
Yeah.
saying. Um, all right. This is a
I
really
want
good
to add,
discussion.
I want to add one thing to what Angela
Sure.
said.
Yeah.
To me, it was very, I think a lot of integrity for them to stay open, because it was such a
Mhm.
tough call. Would your employees make more money on unemployment? Because so many people were making more money on unemployment than to
Mhm.
try to keep them working. So to me, it was a huge credit to them to stay open, and thankful also to Angela's husband, my son-in-law, for looking into like some unemployment programs, some things that made it worth us, because it was really hard. People didn't even want to come back to work. You know, they were still collecting all this money. So in order to figure out through the system how to make it beneficial to bring your employees back so that they wouldn't have rather stayed home on unemployment, that was another big challenge.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a big deal, I think, to succeed in that, because like I said, I know a lot of people that it's just, well, I don't want to go back to work. And that's not a criticism toward them necessarily. It's just, I think we've reached a
Yeah.
point where people are maybe expecting a little bit more, and the system kind of crash and burn the way that it is a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I see a lot of employers, friends that I have that have employees, getting creative and working with their employees and incentivizing and doing different things to kind of help them get back to work. And like Angela said, kind of have that work-life balance a little bit. So
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Yep.
I have a question from one of the people on the call. So she would like to know what it's like being business partners with your brother, Angela, and with your husband, Leslie. So whoever wants to go first and kind of talk about maybe how that works overall and like day to day, what that's like to sort of be a business partner with someone in your family. Okay.
I'll go first. I don't know any difference, okay? I don't know any better. Like we worked together since the day we started, so I don't know what it's like not to work with your husband. So it's never been a problem. But in any family business, like sometimes, like Angela said with her brother, you know, they're able to honest, open relationship. Sometimes our honesty and our discussions are so honest and open, we scare the employees if they overhear it. So it can be like that, but it's wonderful. It's wonderful. And the other thing I would say, when Angela in the beginning, like, thanks to us for encouraging her, you know, to open her business, and that was just not the conversation the first 3 months they were open. It was tears and too many hours and who made her do this and what were we thinking, and you know, but it took 3 months at least. Do you remember actually how much time you had before you liked your business? But family business, you know, I have all 3 kids and all 3 of them worked in the hair business. Even Angela and her brother worked in the hair business before. Okay. So yeah, when things change, discussions, opinions, emotions can be very challenging, but luckily we're a pretty grounded family. So
we've tried everything too. Like, only the person holding the water can talk, or what, you know, all those things. And actually, you know, it's to the point where, you know, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, my husband will be like, can we please not talk about work? Can we put, you know, at this thing? But sometimes you're so busy in the day to day that those are the only chances that you have to like talk about, you know. Yesterday after work, I called my brother and I was like, we were like, I've said this 50 times, like, we really need to sit down and talk about these things, like next, you know, goals, next step, whatever. But then, you know, you just get caught up in the working, you know, day to day. I know I would just basically describe it as the same way she described the first 3 months of us opening. It's an emotional roller coaster, but at least I have someone that's like, you know, he gets like, you know, we have a good relationship. So if I mean, I think one advantage to working with family is that you don't always have to keep it super professional. So if I'm having a bad day, like, and I need to come in and just like talk to my brother before we start our work day, I have that. So it's like, and he's, you know, and if he's having a bad day and he calls me, and I like, you know, we're like truly there for each other. And sometimes that means like, that's tough love. And sometimes that's, you know, but, yeah, but I don't know, I guess for me, at least, probably because I like grew up around, like, again, like it's a unique situation because we grew up around, you know, in a family business, and we're all fairly close in age. And so I think it's like it's a unique situation. So there's been ups and downs, no doubt. But I think it's at the same time, it would just be like, any other, if we weren't siblings, I mean, it's still like, you want to see a 50-50 effort. You want to have a good open communication.
Mhm.
He has certain things he's in charge of. I have certain things I'm in charge of. We both know our strengths and weaknesses. We joke about that. So, I mean, it's just like any other partnership, whether we were related or not.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I do think
go ahead.
the element of family love must make it a little easier to make up at the end of the day.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sure.
Because sometimes you would just be like, I quit.
Yeah. If you were just a partner and not family, you might have quit.
Yeah. I joke all the time, like, can I put my 2 weeks notice? So,
Well, that's really great though that you guys, like you said, you know what you're good at, you know what somebody else is good at, and you guys can kind of work that way. My husband owns an art gallery in downtown Youngstown,
oh, cool.
and well, it is really cool. I kind of tried to like go in and help once, and I like walked into the quote office and saw it, and I'm like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
This is too. I can't. This is, So that was kind of like the extent of what we were doing. But that's really cool that you guys have kind of come up with what sounds like a really good system. So, um, so, Angela, if you could give any words of wisdom or pieces of advice to any women who are thinking about starting their own business and maybe feel like you did, where it's like, is this going to take off? Are people going to show up? Is this going to be a total flop? What advice would you have for other aspiring female entrepreneurs?
Yeah. I feel like I actually have been giving this advice lately because I have a lot of graduating high school. I shouldn't say a lot, but I
Mm-hmm.
have several, either graduating high school, going to college, or in college, not sure what they want to study, not sure what they want to do. I think my advice would be, I'm 38 and I have done several jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I just, if you're passionate about something, if you're like, I think if you do something that you thoroughly enjoy doing, okay, and everyone's working for money. Let's just put that on the table, right? So we're all going to work because we need to earn money. But at the end of the day, there's a billion ways you can do that. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have something that you care about, you enjoy doing, and you think like, wow, if I could get paid to do this, or if I could, this will leave an imprint on the world, or like, this is how I'm going to make my mark, and it doesn't have to be, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be like, I'm in the NBA or whatever. Okay. It could be whatever it is in here, that gets you excited to get up in the morning. I would just say, try it and
Mm-hmm.
do it because you love it. And then if it doesn't work out, do something else. It's okay. And that's like kind of what, even like with the approach with the menu, you don't have to have it all figured out. That would be my advice. Like, I still don't have it all figured out at all. And I tell the
Right.
girls that work that, like, you might go to school for this thing and you might do that for a while, and then you might grow up a little bit and figure out you want to do something else. And that's what I still see for myself. Like, I'm still learning, I'm still evolving. And so, what do you have to lose, really? I just feel like in time, effort, but you're going to learn along the way. So you're going to gain something. So I just would say, yeah, go in with the right expectations, commit 100%, and then, it will probably work out. And if it doesn't, try something else.
I think we need to hear that a lot. And not just female entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs in general. The point that you made, that time is not wasted by trying something and then deciding, hey, maybe this isn't what I want to do, or this isn't working out the way I thought it would, and then going to something else. I think so many of us want to have like a fail proof thing that we're doing, and we're hesitant to do anything and unless we think we know, okay, like this isn't going to fail, or this is going to be what I want to do. So I think it's good to hear from other successful business people that, okay, none of us have this all figured out when we start, but we have a dream and we just kind of go with it and see what happens here. So I think that's really solid advice.
Yeah, I think I just thought about this, but I remember when I was in college and my mom would always say to me, because she didn't go to college, and she would say, you know, what I'm paying for your college tuition, because this is her talking to me, what I'm paying for your college tuition is just money that was, that in her experience would be spent on like learning. Okay. So maybe mistakes that were made, or, learning along the way. Okay. Those learning along the way costs money. Going to college costs money. And I would just say anything that you approach, if you look at it, the time and effort that you put in, because this is, this is getting presented to college students, right? So it's like, how much money do you pay per credit hour? And like in life, okay, these are experiences that if you chalked it up to the credit hours of what you're going to, whether at the end you can deem it successful or not, you're still learning along the way, just as if you were taking a class. I mean, at the end of that class,
Yep.
it should, so it's the same. And I think if you look at it like that, it will be more, take some of the pressure off of, and just be in it, and, one step at a time.
That's really good advice. Thank you for sharing that. Leslie, what about you? What advice would you give to aspiring female entrepreneurs?
I would say surround yourself with other female entrepreneurs.
That's great.
One of the most valuable things, and I could name them all in this town, okay? But even in this last year, and there's not a time we're not calling each other, like when health insurance changed, COVID, the regulations, but other people, if I was getting sued or, whatever expensive mistake that was happening in my life because I didn't go to college, I could reach out to my network of other female businesswomen, and there was going to be someone who had already dealt with that workers' comp issue, or who had dealt with, whatever I was going through, and we just help each other. And then, if they need to know something, I know. But your network, the people you surround yourself with, finding the classes, whatever's available that you need to know. I still laugh to this day. Like, we had like one of the first computers in the hair industry, and we worked off of DOS, where you actually had to type in exit.
I remember DOS. Yeah.
Okay. So you have to be willing to make the uncomfortable changes as your industry changes, whatever you're in. I think you should never be satisfied, never get comfortable, always be changing, and hang out with other successful women.
Yeah.
And the older they are, the smarter they are, because they've been through it and they've made all the mistakes. So surround yourself with some great women entrepreneurs. And even if you don't know them, it's just like right now, it's a joy and an honor that people want to know what you know. Okay. And everyone loves to tell somebody what they know and help them. So, utilize other women in business, because they love to help each other.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's true. Your point about kind of growing as the field grows, I think that's so important. I do a little bit of work here and there, in and out of different businesses. My main career is teaching. I teach college at Eastern Gateway and at YSU, and I think I saw firsthand during the pandemic, there were a lot of people who just hadn't maybe kept up with the technology, and they hadn't really evolved with the field. So I would agree with you that that's so important in any field that we're in.
Sure.
All right, I wanted to open this up. It's 6:50, so I wanted to open this up for Q&A. We have a decent amount of time left, so if you'd like to type in the chat, or anyone who's on this call, feel free to take yourself off mute and ask Angela and Leslie some questions.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, so I own a small business, and there's definitely good days and bad days. And when I'm having the bad days, I like to think back at some of the good days and some of the big wins that we've had. So, question for all the female entrepreneurs up here: what are some of the good days you think back to?
our salon, we made a huge goal for ourselves one year. And this, to me, we wanted to be the educational salon of the year because our industry changes so much. We made a commitment to attend the most classes, like whether it was hair cutting, color, we're always trying to grow our people. So that year we made a commitment out of the whole United States for Redken, which we are a Black elite salon. We're one of their, at that time, we were actually one of their top 10 salons in the country. But even out of that, we wanted to make sure we were recognized for our commitment to education. And we won that educational Salon of the Year award. We were all in Vegas together at the Redken Symposium, and they spoiled us and honored us. So that was a huge team accomplishment because it took everybody to go to the classes. Yeah,
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like for me, the good days and bad days, I guess like that might actually just be dependent on my mood. But I mean, I not only that, but like I don't have like a standout day. Like I don't have, I mean, when we first opened, I mean, I could definitely go back to that moment because we do live in a small town and there was so much anticipation that like we just got completely slammed back in that. But I feel like the people that we have working with us, like just to give you an example, one of the girls that works with us, she texted me the other day. She was working out at Planet Fitness and she said, she just sent me this text that said, it's just, when I see people walking around the gym wearing these shirts and I think about what you've built over the last 2 years and how proud of yourself you must be, which I don't personally think like that very often, but she sent that to me and I thought that is awesome. Like that people are like, I think what I think back to, and I can definitely tell you, I think about this a lot and probably on the bad days now that I'm really thinking about it. I remember before we opened and I did have so much fear in trying to figure things out. And when I was working for my parents at the time, and it's literally a well-oiled machine. I mean, it's just like everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing. Okay. And I would lay in bed at night and I would think, I cannot wait until Fresh Twist is open and it's at the point where it's a well-oiled machine. And so even on the bad days, I have a good support system. I know what needs to be done. And for us, that would just be like a slow day. And actually today was kind of a slow day. The weather definitely affects us. And so my brother and I were texting, today was a slow day and we were texting like, what are we going to do tomorrow to kind of make up for today? And that's just kind of where I go. It's like, yeah, well, everybody probably at work got to eat lunch today. So they're probably happy because sometimes we're so busy, we don't eat, And so it's like, so they deserve a day that's a little slower and tomorrow we'll be busy again. And I just go, so I just know that eventually it will get busy again. And I guess I think more about that, and then I do have like basically back to what my mom was saying, like, I feel like the team that we have working with us is like being surrounded by people all the time who genuinely want to see you succeed. And so that keeps me feeling good too. So I don't know if I have like one specific day, but I get grateful to how far we've come.
And I want to add one more thing to the guy who's calling in. To me, faith is huge. Like there's that scripture, you have to, whatever you believe you will receive. If you have faith on the bad days, that's where your faith comes in because there's bad days, but you always have to believe that lesson is there to teach you something and that you're going to get through that no matter how expensive it is.
I'm sure. Great. All right. Thank you for that answer. Anybody else have any questions they'd like to ask?
I do have 3 questions and I'll ask them one by one. So the first question I have for both of you is, COVID mandates aside, what is one law that helped you in your respective industries, and one law that hurt you in your respective industries when you got started? And even if there's one today that you think of as two, that's fine.
One of the most painful laws that happened to us was when the state of Ohio decided you had to have an architect do blueprints, because I'll never forget that one. I was on my 4th salon. We had grown outgrown 3 things, and we were opening our 4th. And I had never had to have an architect have to stamp the blueprints. Before that, the equipment companies did your blueprints, and you just got them approved by the city. So that was an extra $14,000 when they passed that law, which that, and that's one thing I feel bad about, like young people starting now. Like when we started, you could do a business without a lot of money, and it's a lot tougher now. But then you say a law that was in our favor. I have to think on that one.
Yeah, I know this. I'm struggling with this one.
A law that was in our favor.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a law per se. It could be something that the government did that helped you as well. Because those are done by laws.
Unemployment last year. That was the first time in my life after 45 years I got to collect unemployment. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as far as like laws go, I would say, I don't even know if this would really be like, I don't know if this is going to answer your question. I think one of the best advantages of being a business owner is just the tax advantages. So, and making sure you have a good accountant that can help you with that. So I used to joke all the time that before I had this as my job, I spent my full-time income on just trying to feed my family healthy. And so I would always say, like, I could work at Fresh Twist for free as long as my groceries are covered. But there's just other advantages. So I would just say, I think any type of laws that are in place to help with, giving tax breaks to business owners for education, travel, costs of goods sold, things like that, I would say is the biggest advantage. And then as far as like the only like law that really got me going was when we had to put the new sign up. I mean, there was like a variant, we had to apply for a variance. It's sometimes you wonder, like, there are building variances in place to keep a community looking nice. And I totally get that because I used to sell new construction. So in a neighborhood, for example, you would want all the houses with the same setback from the street. It gives a lot of curb appeal. And when we went to put our sign up, we were taking down a sign and putting a new sign up, but the building codes had changed to where they wanted the sign further away from the street. Well, that wasn't doable with the space that we had. So to put a new sign in the exact same spot, we had to apply for a variance. And I think we paid $500 for the variance in order just to replace a less attractive sign with a more attractive sign. So sometimes you think, was that necessary? But I mean, I get the intention. I get the intention of that. So I'm not, but I mean, that was probably the only thing I can honestly think of that was like kind of it worked against us in a way financially, but I don't know.
Yeah, they also made us have an architect design the sign for hurricane strength wind. So I had to pay another $500 just for the architect to approve the sign. So again, none of those things were in place when we started our business. So I think it's way more expensive to start a business now. I think it's way more challenging for a young person to start a business today.
Financially.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for those answers. I'm really glad that you brought up taxes, because that highlights something within laws that people don't understand. Is laws are in your everyday life, whether or not you want to think it's a law or not, because in order for the government to do something, it has to be a law first.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that piece. Regarding unemployment, obviously making more on unemployment and, making money and not working is a factor, but do you think the stereotype and how people were treated in the service sector prior to COVID is one of the reasons you can't get people to come back? So like, for example, when I worked in food service all through high school and in college, a lot of the times, hours were very political. Who got hours was a lot of politics. Obviously not having healthcare. If you take Walmart, for example, Walmart, not necessarily food service, but it's in the service sector where, okay, almost every single person that works at a Walmart store has to be on welfare because they don't make enough money, something like that. Do you think like the overall stereotype of what it means and what it looks like to work in a service industry job is one of the reasons even good employers within the service sector are having such a hard time attracting people to come back?
I don't think so. I really don't. I think COVID
I
made
think
people,
I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second though. I'm just going to, just because we've worked together for a long time, it's going to be hard for us to answer this question because the issue that you're describing, we didn't actually have that issue because we're not those employers. And we've been self-employed for so long, like we haven't worked, we don't have the, you know, it sounds like maybe you're coming from an experience where I hope that anyone who had a job who was treated poorly and couldn't, was working and couldn't afford a decent lifestyle, I hope that that is another silver lining that comes out of this, where again, the same way we were talking earlier about like life balance, I hope that, if it's within reason for businesses to be able to treat their employees better, if they can stay in business and do that. I mean, that's one of the things my parents taught me from the jump. Okay, so you got to take care of your people. I think that's kind of what you're saying. I absolutely think that that's something that's good that should come out of this. And I think that people who devote a huge portion of their lives to their work should be taken care of. But I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mom, but I just wanted to say, like, we're going to say we don't think that's the case, but that's because most of our people came back. And if they didn't, there was specific reasons why they didn't. And it wasn't, because they decided not working would be more advantageous than coming back to work, so sorry, that's all I wanted to say about that, just because.
yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, that makes sense. I just didn't know, like, if you, like, in terms of, like, I wasn't saying like you guys were the companies that do those kind of things,
no,
but I
yeah.
mean, in general, like, have you, like, what you've been seeing within the industry? But that's fine. The last question I have is just kind of, what makes you do what you do? Like, I know we kind of touched on this a little bit, but at the end of the day, when there's like, the whole world is crashing, what makes you still walk in that door and not just shut it down?
For me, I always say I'm never satisfied. I always want to make things better. And I like the challenge. Like, I can't imagine not having, I can't imagine, I guess, being comfortable. I like that, being challenged and always making things better for the people that work for me, for the clients that come in, for the environment, for the money they make, for, everything, just to make the experience better. It's fun creating something good every day, making it better.
Listen, I'm so glad you just said that, because it sparked a memory in my brain, which I remember during this whole COVID thing, and just using that as an example, walking in my mom's office, and she literally said to me, "This is kind of exciting. I haven't been challenged like this in a while." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" I mean, like she was thriving at the opportunity to problem solve. But as far as my answer to your question, I like one of my favorite workout instructors is like I do the Peloton, and it's a workout instructor. Her name's Jess Sims. And she always says this: you don't have to, you get to. And I just think if you have an opportunity to, if you're healthy enough, if you're capable, if you're employed, if you have an opportunity to show up and do something to contribute to the world, I think that's what we're here for. I mean, is basically to, to contribute. And so I would just say, like, my mentality would be like, I don't have to go to work. I get to go to work. Like, I'm thankful for that. And there's, that doesn't mean that sometimes I don't want to go to work because sometimes I want to stay home. But I think to answer your question, like what gets you to keep going even when it's hard is just remembering that is staying in a grateful mentality.
Thank you for sharing. Do we have any other questions? Well, this was a really great discussion. I just want to say thanks for sharing all of this insight and information. Both of you have such positive attitudes. It's been really nice to hear all of this insight and advice from you. So I'll just ask once more, anyone have anything they want to add? Any comments or questions? Sorry, you can probably hear my kids in the background now. They have found me. They're coming up the steps.
No, I mean, I personally would just like to add that I think it's awesome that you're doing this because, I mean, it kind of goes back with what my mom was saying, which is just like, networking, keeping an open mind, hearing real world experiences, just kind of opens your mind to things like opportunities that are out there. Like, it's like listening to podcasts or, well, that's kind of basically what this is. So I think it's really cool that you guys are doing this. This is like really, I think, a huge benefit for the students, and I'm thankful that you reached out to us. I'm glad we could help.
Well, thank you. Thank you both for participating.
Thank you.
Courtney, if I can ask one more question since no one else has
Sure,
it.
yeah, go ahead.
I would like to ask, this is going to be a tough question, and I don't mean anything negative by it. So within entrepreneurship, pigeonholing and shooting yourself in the foot is something every entrepreneur does. But do you think that within the women's subgroup of entrepreneurship, do you think some women entrepreneurs pigeonhole or shoot themselves in the foot or miss out on an opportunity because they, in their mindset, go, I'm a woman, I can't do that kind of thing? If that makes sense. Hopefully I explained that right.
I've never seen that in one woman I know.
Yeah.
I've yet to find her.
I think that anybody, male or female, could absolutely shoot themselves in the foot if the conversation they have with themselves is, I can't do that. Then yeah, anybody could do that. So I don't think that matters, male or female. I am guilty of having an idea, and this has nothing to do with being a female, but having an idea and immediately starting to think about why it's not going to work. And then having to come back to the idea and saying, okay, but what are the reasons why it could work? So, I mean, I think that would just be a human thing.
Well, I don't necessarily mean like I can't do that as the general thing, but like I do know of some women that basically say, I can't do something because I'm a woman. Like there's a stigmatism, and you normally see it in like the older generation because of the way they were brought up in terms of thinking that they weren't allowed to work. But So like, that's what I meant. Like,
Yeah,
not necessarily that mindset, but basically just using, like, thinking because you're a woman, you can't do something, if that makes sense.
I do think it makes sense. I do think I understand what you're saying, which is kind of like that individual woman has a perception that because she's a woman, she's not capable of doing that. And I just feel like that's like a misconception, like that person, for whatever reason, like you said, has been taught or raised or, programmed to think that, but I don't actually think that is a real roadblock. I think that is that person. That is something that they've been conditioned to believe. I don't believe that to be true. So maybe that's why I just don't, I can't think of off the top of my head, like all the industries personally that I have worked in, real estate, the hair industry, and even where I'm working now are a little bit female driven. So I just, in my perception or in my perspective, and like the people that I've worked with, I haven't seen or had a friend who like had that happen to them. Although, I mean, back in the day, of course, yeah. I mean, women were expected to stay home and things like that. But I think now we have, come a long way as far as, equal opportunities and being respected in the workplace.
A cute story I'll tell you on that is, again, I had that Italian mother-in-law and she used to say, you could stay home with the kids. I said, I don't want to stay home with the kids. I want to go to work. And she would be like, don't tell anybody that. Don't tell people that. Like I was a terrible mother or something. But again, because I surrounded myself most of my life with strong business women from the very beginning, I've never been around business women, because they were on business and they were challenged by that. So I don't feel like any of us ever felt that stigma. I didn't.
Well, I guess then I would ask a follow-up question on that. If someone was having that mindset, what would be your words of advice to them to try to get that mindset to shift?
Believe in yourself. It doesn't matter what sex you are.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would have to give actual advice. I have to understand like the circumstances a little bit better, but I would have to like, what is the like everyone's having a conversation with themselves. Like there's a conversation happening in that person's mind that's telling them they can't do it for this reason. I mean, in order to really give advice, I would just try to talk through that and probably ask more questions than tell them something. What makes you think that this is what's happening? What has happened to you to give you that impression? What formed this belief or something? And keep asking them questions to get it out of them what actually is the problem. Because maybe by asking the questions, they'll start to realize it is just that, a belief in their head. You know what I'm saying? Something that has been taught. Maybe nothing's actually happened to get them to that point. I mean, that's where I would start. It's just a kind of a broad question.
And I would like to add too, I think this goes back to what Leslie said about having a very supportive network of female entrepreneurs. If you have a negative self-belief or there's negative self-talk or you're constantly getting in your own way, I think Leslie's point is great that there are women, there are groups out there, there are women who've probably gone through the same thing. I can't do this. I'm not good enough for this. This field is dominated by men, maybe, whatever it might be. I think networking and having that support system like we talked about tonight can help women overcome some of this stuff that we're talking about now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I'll say this, even when I started in the industry, most of the famous hairdressers were males, okay? The Vidal Sassoons, John Delaria, and men were so much more respected, okay? Like, everybody wanted to go to the male hairdresser. And I think I got with my female employees, which we have always had primarily female employees. It's usually like 40-1, one being my husband. So being that there were so many of us women, like we weren't going to let a male hairdresser walk in there and not do his share and sweep the floor and fold the towels and all the things we did. You know what I mean? And we knew we could do hair just as good as any man. All right. So I guess I came more from that aspect of it. Okay. And then now so many of the women hair, famous hairdressers now are women. Okay. But there, in the beginning, there was that shift from, they were going to go to the male hairdresser. So I think we overcame that.
You got to walk in like you own the place, right? That's always been my
Right.
belief.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right. This is really good discussion. Anybody else want to ask any questions or have any comments? All right. Well, I want to say from everyone on the call, thank you for joining us tonight and for providing all this insight. Those of you that are on the call, this is one of several events. So be on the lookout for more of these weekly events. They will always be on Wednesdays from 6 to 7:30. Ron or Georgianne, I don't have the schedule in front of me. Do you guys know what when the next one is?
Next week is nonprofits, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, so that would be me. So if that's something you're interested in or you'd like to network and hear from women in the nonprofit industry, definitely hop on. And it was great to have you all on the call tonight. Thank you again for sharing all of your insight with us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for all the great
Thanks.
questions.
So